Okay, so as you know, we are starting this topic, accrual and prepayment, right? So if you have any issues, you can ask me there and then. Okay.
Yes,
So
sir.
over here, we'll first be looking at
Okay,
one
sir.
important thing, which is called the accruals concept, because this is something which is very important in financial accounting, and this is something which is based in most of the things over here. Okay. Now,
Okay,
what
sir.
actually is accrual concept? It's basically like an assumption. Okay, it's like a financial concept, a financial matter, which
Okay, sir.
everything revolves around that. Okay, so over here you can see that what it's saying is the accrual basis for accounting means that to calculate the profit for the period, we must include all the income and expenditure relating to the period. This we have already studied before, right? Because when we studied the statement
Yes,
of profit or loss, if you remember, we studied this, that we first write all the incomes, then the expenses. When we net them off, we either get a profit, we either get a loss, right? We have already done this. Whether or not, now this is basically the main purpose of accrual basis, like whether or not the cash has been received or not. Okay, so basically
okay.
there are
So,
two
but we
concepts.
haven't done the profit statement of profit and loss yet, no, sir. And the financial statements we haven't completed still.
We have done it, statement of profit and loss and financial vision, right, in the last
No,
week.
sir. No,
Yeah, yeah.
sir. We kept saying we'll do it, but we haven't done it. We only finished the. Okay, sir.
So what we do is in accrual basis is that when we study the statement of profit or loss and the statement of financial position, in the statement of profit or loss, from the name, you can understand that what we are doing is that either it tells a profit or either it tells a loss. Right now, how do
Yes.
we get a profit or a loss? We basically just write down all the incomes, right? Like sales, other income, interest income, rental income, everything, and then we deduct the expenses from there, right? So we get a profit. Now, if the expenses are more than the income, we get a loss, right? We have made a loss.
Yes,
So
sir.
in this case, basically in financial accounting, there are two bases for recording transactions, right? First one is this accrual basis, right? And second basis is called cash basis. Now, this cash basis is basically opposite to the accrual basis. If I call that, what
Okay.
is, if I ask someone what is opposite to the accrual basis, so the answer would be cash basis. Okay, so cash
Okay.
basis is opposite to accrual, because in cash basis what we do is that the income and expenses we write on cash received or paid basis, right? This is the difference.
Okay.
But in
Yes.
accrual
Okay.
concept, we write it on a expenditure incurred or income earned way. Okay, in this it was
Okay.
cash received or cash paid. Let me write cash received,
Okay, sir.
like actually we receive the cash in our hands, right? Cash received
Yes.
or cash paid. Now this happens very rare in financial accounting. As you know, till now we have
Okay.
studied most things on assumption basis, right? Let me give you some examples. Depreciation,
Okay.
right? Amortization, is that actual? Are we paying actual cash in that? No, that is non-cash thing,
No.
right? It is just an
Yes, sir.
imaginary decrease, right? So
Yes, sir.
what happens is that one more example can be, let's say, um, in sales, in the credit sales, right? We create a receivable,
Okay.
but are we receiving cash right now or after 50 years? So it's after 50 years, right? Sorry, after 50
Yes,
days. I'm
sir.
sorry, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
in
Yes,
that case,
sir.
it's a credit sale. Same happens in credit purchase as well, right? We are
Okay.
making a purchase, right? But let's say we are
Yes,
paying after
sir.
1 month or 50 days or 60 days, right? So
Yes, sir.
that was also an example of accrual. So in accrual, we write the income on earned basis. I'll give you one more example over here. Income on
Yes, sir.
earned basis. Now, earned is something different. Cash received is
Okay.
something different. Okay, this is the main
Okay, sir.
concept of accrual. Now, secondly, in
Oh, okay.
expenses we write it as incurred basis. Okay, now let
Okay.
me give you an example. Like for example, in most countries, even in your country, it will this might be happening to us. So what we do is that,
Okay.
let's say there is a telephone bill or an internet bill, right? Every home has a broadband right now, right? The internet facility, the
Yes.
routers. So
Yes,
mostly
sir.
over here, what happens is that people, use, they can take monthly plans as well. They can take 3 monthly plan as well, but they're billed at the end, right? Like let's say I've taken a
Yes,
monthly
sir.
plan. So when I
Yes.
complete the 30 days, on the 31st day I will pay them. Okay,
Correct,
I
sir.
need to complete the 30 days. So that is basically called
Correct.
expense. I've incurred the expense, like in 30 days I've incurred the expense, but the payment,
Yes,
when I'm
sir.
making it, payment I'm making it on the 31st day, like at the end of the month,
Correct, sir.
right? So
Correct,
if
sir.
we look at it as a at a cash basis, I look at that 31st day, right? But if I look
Oh,
at it at a whole month, like income earned or expenses incurred basis, that will be called a accrual
yes,
basis.
sir.
Okay, because we are moving
Oh,
through assumption, even though cash has
right.
actually physically not been paid or received, but still we are
Yes, sir.
accounting for that income or expenses. This is called accrual concept.
Oh,
Okay, right?
got it, sir.
Now there
Okay.
is same thing that we discussed above, that uh, income earned minus the expenses is equal to the profit. There can be loss as well. Okay, now
Yes, sir.
let's read some things about this accrual concept. So the accrual
Okay.
concept is identified as important accounting concept by IS1 presentation. So obviously it is very important because everything revolves around it. Okay.
Yes.
The concept is that income and expenses should be matched together and dealt with in the statement of profit or loss for the period to which they relate. Regardless, this is very important, regardless of the period in which the cash was actually received or paid. So again, we write them on a expenditure incurred or income earned way. Okay, not cash received.
Oh,
It doesn't matter we have paid
oh,
or received cash. Okay, therefore,
okay, sir.
all of the expenses involved in making the sales for a period should be matched with the sales income and dealt with in the period in which the sales themselves are accounted for. Now, this is basically talking about the matching concept. Okay, this is
Oh,
another
okay,
concept.
sir.
This is basically in chapter, I think chapter 1 or 2. We have to study that at the end. If you remember, I told you, right?
Okay, sir.
In the start. So theoretical things, I'll be covering that maybe during the syllabus or preferably at the end of syllabus. Okay, right?
Okay, sir.
So main concept over here is accrual concept, which is a assumption based concept. Okay, again, in
Oh,
which the income we record on an earned basis. Like another example I'll
okay.
give you. Let's say you are an employee somewhere in a company, right? And you
Okay,
get the
sir.
salary at the end of the month, right? Not at the
Okay,
start,
sir.
at the end of the month. Now you are working daily, you are working hard daily for your employer, right? 5 days a week or even 6 days a week, daily, 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 you're working,
Yes.
right? You're doing
Okay,
hard
sir.
work, but you're just getting money at the end of the period, right? At the end of the month.
Oh,
So that is
okay,
also
sir.
income earned concept. Cash you will receive on the 31st day, right? But you have earned income as soon as you're working. First day you work, you earned income. Second day you work, you
Oh,
earned
yeah,
income. 15th day you work,
yeah.
you earned income. But you'll get
Yes,
the
sir.
cash once that is realized, basically. Okay?
Oh,
Because we
correct,
studied
sir.
this word
Correct.
realization, which means you'll actually receive cash in your hands.
Yes, sir.
Okay, right? So I hope this gives you a basic concept of accruals, right? Again, this will be
Yes.
built up slowly and gradually. This will be, it's covered in everything, in every topic in FT.
Okay. Okay,
Okay,
sir.
right? So these things you can also read if you want. This is the same. I don't think there is a need to read this. This is just theory, right?
Yes, sir.
And we'll just simply start with the topic right now. Okay, now over here in accruals and prepayments, we just have to remember total of 6 things. Okay, it's
Okay,
just
sir.
6 things, because this thing in the chapter you might see it as 20, 25 things, right? But it's simply
Yes, sir.
just 6 things. If I count them, they're just six.
Oh,
Okay, so accruals
oh, okay, sir.
and prepayments.
Okay, sir.
Okay, now in accrual and prepayment, what happens is that initially there are 4 things and just there are 2 T accounts to remember, so that makes it 6 things. Okay, now first let's talk
Okay,
about the
sir.
main 4 things over here. Okay, now
Okay, sir.
let me first tell you about the accrual and prepayment literal meaning, like literally what do they mean in English. Okay, now
Sure, sir.
accrual literal meaning, even if you search on Google or everywhere, this means anything delayed. Okay,
Oh, delayed.
anything
Okay,
with a
sir.
delayed effect, right? Now
Okay, sir.
there can be two effects to this: income as well and expenditure as well. Now there
Okay,
can
sir.
be delayed income as well, right? And delayed expense as well. So that means accrued income and accrued expense. So for each of these, for accrual as well, there is income and
Yes,
expense,
sir.
right?
Yes.
And for prepayment, there is also same thing, income and expense, both things.
Okay,
So
sir.
that makes it four
Okay, sir.
things, right? Now, accrual meaning was delayed. Anything which is delayed. I'll come to the detail in just a while. We'll do this topic with highly detail. Okay, we will not miss anything. Now, prepayment.
Sure.
What means prepayment? Prepayment means anything which is paid beforehand, like before taking the benefit, right? And that is itself the meaning of prepayment, like prepayment. Before the benefit, you have
Okay,
done the
sir.
payment. Like let's say you have, taken some TV subscription or a music subscription or an online subscription, or let's say you have bought some software online, right? So you
Oh, okay,
usually do
sir.
the prepayment over there, right? You first pay
Yes,
and then
sir.
you get the benefit. Similarly, the
Yes,
same
yes,
thing,
correct, sir.
same thing is in fast food as well. Like let's say you go to any restaurant. Mainly in restaurants you pay after
Okay.
eating the food, but in fast food restaurants, what you do is that you first pay at the counter and then wait for your order. That is also prepayment,
Correct. Yes, sir.
right?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So this was one basic definition. Now let's come to the details of it. Okay. Now
Okay, sir.
there are four things to remember. I'll write first of all
Oh,
accrued income,
okay.
accrued income. Then I'll write accrued expense.
Okay,
Okay.
sir.
Then I'll write prepaid income. These are two
Okay.
things related to the prepayments. Okay. Prepaid income,
Okay.
and then we had prepaid expense. Prepaid expense.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Now first let's discuss the accrued income. Just a second.
Okay.
Okay, so let's first discuss the accrued income. Now, accrued, you have to simply remember again the word accrual means delayed, anything which is delayed, right? Now, what does
Okay, sir.
accrued income means? Any income that you're receiving, but not now, delayed. It's a bit delayed afterwards, right? You can
Yes,
understand it
yes,
like that. Accrued income
yes,
means
sir.
delayed income, right? So
Okay, sir.
if I talk about delayed income, it should mean the
Mhm.
perfect example of that employee, right? If you're employee in the company, you're working every day hard, right? And on the
Yes,
31st day you will get the payment. So that is income earned, yeah, but that is accrued, delayed, right? So that
correct,
means
sir.
you're waiting for it continuously. You're waiting for it for the month to end so that you can receive the money for your hard work that you've done, right?
Correct,
So
sir.
this is always accounted for, always remember, as a asset, always. Why asset? Because you're basically waiting for that. Another example can be receivable, right? When we create a
Yes,
receivable, this credit sale, we do credit sale, debit receivable, right? So still we are
yes,
waiting for the payment from the customer, right? We are waiting for the 30 days to get over, right?
yes,
That
sir.
is also asset. So anything, any income which is delayed, which we have to receive in the future, that is always called asset. Always remember.
Okay,
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 right?
sir.
Now, the entry for this, let me first write a small definition. Like you
Okay.
have, or let's change this a bit. Benefit basically provided, benefit provided, but payment not received. Okay,
Got it, sir.
benefit provided, but payment yet not received. Okay, just give me 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay, so in accrued income, because it's an asset, what is the double entry that we do? We do debit
Yes, sir.
accrued income, because accrued income itself is an asset, right? So asset, whenever
Yes,
it's increased, it's always debited, right? So debit accrued
correct,
income,
sir.
and credit is the income that we earn. Okay, this is basically
Yes.
accrued income asset. You can remember the full word should be accrued income asset, right? Debit
Okay,
accrued
sir.
income asset, and credit we do income. Now you know why are we crediting income? Because I just told you in the start accrual concept, that is basically income earned, right, and expenditure incurred basis. We are actually not receiving cash. You can see there is
Yes.
no debit cash over here. There is just an
Yes,
asset
sir.
being debit, but we are crediting the
Yes,
corresponding
sir.
thing, which is the income, right?
Okay,
So
sir.
this is what we do over here. Okay, just a
Okay,
second.
sir.
Okay, now let's move to accrued expense. Okay, now in
Okay.
accrued expense, logically, if we think, what happens is accrued again, it's delayed, right? Accrued means delayed,
Yes,
expense is expense, right? So delayed
yes, sir.
expense. Delayed expense means something which is outstanding, you are still not paid yet. right? Let's say you have received 1 month's electricity bill, and let's say, for example, you were out of city or out of country, so unfortunately you were not able to pay that, right? Now
Okay, sir.
in the next bill, let's say it was October bill, the month that just passed 5 days ago, right?
Okay, sir.
Let's say you did not pay the October electricity bill. Now when the November
Okay.
electricity bill will come at the end of the month, what will we do
Hmm.
is that the persons over there, the company, will add a accrual as well of the previous expense that you did not pay, right? So always remember,
Okay.
accrued expense always increases the burden, increases the obligation on you, because you have not made the expense payment which you should have till
Yes.
yet, right? So
Yes, sir.
expenses normally should not be delayed, because that becomes a liability then, right? Let
Correct,
me give
sir.
you one more example. Let's say if I purchase something from you, let's say of
Okay.
1000 rupees. Okay, I purchased something from
Okay,
you for
sir.
1000, and I told you that I'll make the payment, let's say by 10th of November, right? After 5 days, 10th
Okay,
November,
sir.
right?
Okay.
But let's say it's 25th November today, and I still have not made payment to you. So that is my liability,
Okay.
right? You are my supplier,
Yes,
right?
sir.
That is my
Correct,
liability.
sir.
I have my
Correct,
obligation to
sir.
fulfill that payment, right? So that is the
Correct,
meaning of
sir.
accrued expense. Okay, always remember,
Okay.
it will be accounted for always as a liability, always, because this
Okay. Got it,
increases
sir.
increases the obligation on us. Okay, now in this what happens is
Okay, sir.
that benefit taken benefit taken but payment not made, benefit taken but payment not made.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so since it's
Yes,
a
correct, sir.
liability, the entry that we do is
Hmm.
always remember credit accrued expense liability,
Debit income.
right? And debit we do, no, this is not income, this is an expense, right? Because income expense is
Expense. Oh,
something
correct.
else, right? Yeah, so
Oh,
what we do
yes,
is
yeah.
that
Okay.
debit we do the relevant expense, whatever we bought
Okay.
from you. Let's say I bought some services from you, right? So I'll debit this service name, for example, because normally we
Okay,
write the
sir.
expense name. Now why I'm debiting the expense? Because remember the accrual concept that we just studied in the start. Remember that
Yes. Yes, sir.
expenses are recorded on incurred basis. Incurred basis means we have incurred it, expense is done, but payment is
Yes,
not made.
sir.
Payment is not made.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay,
when
sir.
the payment will be made, this liability will be finished on debit and credit will do cash, but that is something in the future,
Okay.
because it's accrued, right? It's a delayed one. So right now
Yes.
we make this entry. Are you clear till here? Any issues, any problems?
No, sir.
Okay, great. That's great.
Okay.
Now let's talk about prepaid income. Okay, in
Okay.
prepaid income, what we do is, again, prepaid means anything beforehand, anything that happened beforehand, right? So prepaid income basically means that any income you have received beforehand, right? Let me tell you one thing. Okay,
Yes.
let me tell you one thing. Let's say, um, let's say you're done with F3 level, right? And let's say I'm teaching you the next level. Let's say it's F7 level, for example. Okay,
Okay,
so
sir.
for teaching F7 level, I asked to some student, let's say, that you can make the fee payment now, and I will teach you
Hmm.
in January. Let's say I'll start the classes from 1st January, let's say, for example. Okay,
Okay,
you
sir.
can make the fee payment today, tomorrow, or till 10th November, and I'll teach you from 1st January. So tell me, that benefit is yet to be provided by me, but payment is received
Correct,
beforehand.
sir.
So is that obligation on me? It will be a great burden on me, right? Because I've received payment for something which I was not entitled to yet. Yes, I will be entitled to in the future, after 1 month,
Yes.
like in 1st January,
Yes,
but
sir.
not right now. I should not have received that payment now, right? So this is
Correct, sir.
basically an obligation, and anything which is obligation, a promise, or a burden, that is a liability, right? So always remember,
Correct, sir.
prepaid income is always a liability, because you have received income, yes, but beforehand. You should not have received it
Yes, before
right now.
providing the service. Yes, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
Yes.
so what we do is, you have received payment
Okay.
before providing the benefit,
Okay.
before
Benefit.
providing the benefit. Okay, so this is the definition of it. prepaid income. Now
Yes.
let's look at the double entry, like what will be make the double entry. So obviously it is a liability, right? So what we do is we
Yes.
do credit liability or credit, prepaid income liability. I'm just writing credit liability over here. Okay, credit we
Yes.
do liability, right? And on
Yes,
the debit
sir.
side, what actually is happening is that it's an obligation on us,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Let me actually confirm the double entry of this, so that I'm confirmed I'm not doing wrong. Just a moment. Prepaid income, where is it? Accrued income and yeah, prepaid income. So yeah, debit we do. So over here I've shared the screen. I hope you can see it. So this is the double entry we do for prepaid income.
Okay.
So credit, I've done
Okay.
the prepaid income. In the obviously it's
Okay.
a statement of financial position item. It's a liability, basically credit
Hmm.
liability we can say, credit liability, but it
Okay.
has done debit income, right? So what's happening is in
Yes.
this case, it is necessary to remove the income not relating to the year from statement of profit or loss and create a corresponding liability. So always remember, what we do is that according to the concept that we have studied, it also tells us that
Hmm.
don't overstate the good things, right? The good things in the companies are income. Like if we have
Yeah.
not, let's say my year end is 31st December, right? And I want to
Okay, sir.
start the classes of F7 by 5th January, for example. Okay.
Okay,
So
sir.
let's say I've taken the fee right now from the students. So it should not come in this year, right? Because when my users will see the financial statement, they will say, When you didn't even provide this service, why did you even charge them? Why did you charge the students?"
Yes, sir.
Right? So
Yes, sir.
for explaining that, I will have to post this double entry. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to debit the income over here, because we need to
Okay,
remove the
sir.
income, right? Remove the income because it does not relate to this year. So credit
Yes, sir.
income is increase, debit income is decrease, right? So we are decreasing
Okay.
income because again, it's basically this concept is called, you'll study in the future. This is called cutoff. Cutoff means we don't include anything which does not relate to this year. So we cut off everything from there. Okay. The
Okay,
benefit
sir.
that I actually have to provide from January, I will be recording in 2023, not now. Okay.
Oh,
Right.
right.
So
Okay.
this is the double entry that we post in prepaid income. Okay, clear
Okay.
till here? Any kind of issue, any
Yeah.
small issue, you can let me know.
No, sir. No,
Okay,
sir.
great. So when we'll move towards the questions, they'll be a little bit tricky, but still I'll try my best to explain the best as I can. Okay. Now
Sure, sir.
we are left with just one thing: prepaid expense. Right now, in what we do in prepaid expenses, that again it's an expense, but it's paid beforehand. Right? Let me tell you one
Yes.
more example. Like
Okay.
in prepaid expense, again, the example that I gave you, in fast food restaurants or anywhere, if you go there, you first pay, right? You first pay and then you
Yes,
take your
sir.
order. So that is a
Yes,
prepaid
sir.
expense. In some countries, this also happens is that over here, there's the prepayment packages, right? The mobile data packages, which are prepayment. Like first you load your SIM with some money, right? You put some balance in it, and
Correct,
then you
sir.
can purchase some packages. That is also prepaid.
Correct.
But yes, some people also purchase postpaid. Postpaid means that they will receive the bill at the end of the month, like the calls that they did,
Yes, sir.
SMS, data that they used, right? That is the
Hmm.
accrued expense, right? But this is a
Okay.
prepaid expense. Okay. So in this, what you do is
Okay.
that you have made payment, you have made payment, but
Yes.
benefit is yet to be received. Benefit
Correct,
is
sir.
yet to be received. Okay, this is the meaning of prepaid expense. Okay, now in
Okay,
prepaid
sir.
expense, what we do is that basically, obviously, we have paid the cash over here, right? So what we do is prepaid expense. Yeah, always remember this is our asset. Why it is our asset? Because we've made the payment, and the benefit of it will just take slowly, slowly. Okay, so what we
Okay.
do is that we create a debit
Okay.
prepaid expense asset, prepaid expense asset, right? And credit, what we do is credit, I think we should do expense. Yeah, credit we do expense. Now,
Okay,
why
sir.
am I crediting expense? Because always remember the accrual concept focuses on recording only the things that happened in current period, right? So in this, I've
Okay.
made the payment, but let's say the benefit I've not taken yet. So it will actually be recorded as an expense when I take the benefit. Let's say you bought a Netflix subscription. This is a very good example. Let's say you have bought a Netflix subscription for, let's say, 6 months, okay, or one
Okay,
year or
sir.
6 months, anything you can say. So in that case, you have made the payment right now, but you cannot record it as an expense, right? You cannot record it
Yes.
as expense. Why cannot you record it? Because you have not started to watch it, right? You will start to
Yes,
watch it
sir.
after you have, now purchased it, and after 1 month you'll watch it, after 2 months. So preferably after 6 months, after using all of it, you will record it as expense, right? So expense has
Yes,
been
sir.
incurred, right, but it does not relate to current period. So in this, what we do
Okay.
is, in prepaid expense we post this double entry. Let me confirm this from the book as well. I think I've done it right, but for double checking, let's confirm it.
Okay, sir.
So yeah, prepaid expense. So debit, we do prepayment, which is basically prepayment asset, right? This is
Okay, sir.
debit. And credit, we do expense. Okay. So this is the
Okay.
case. In this case, it is necessary to remove that part of expense which is not relevant to this year, because obviously I've purchased 6 months Netflix subscription, so it will end in next
Yes.
year, right? In April or May, let's say. So that's why
Yes,
it does
sir.
not relate to this year. But yes, the period that relates to this year, I'll only be recording that. Let's say the month of November
Okay.
and December is relating to this year. So only 2 months I'll be recording. Okay. But
Yes,
that
sir.
is the thing we do in the future. You'll understand it from the questions. In the questions, we'll do the same thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Right. Got it. So only remember two things in this. The whole summary I'm giving to you. Only remember two things.
Yes.
First, the accrual
Okay.
concept that we have studied. Accrual concept
Yes,
says
sir.
only record the things that relate to this period in this period. Nothing except
Yes,
that.
sir.
Either it's income, either
Yes.
it's expense. Only record it
Mm.
if it relates to this year, right? And the
Okay, sir.
second thing that you have to remember is, second thing is that I'm telling you right now. I'm writing a small
Mm.
note over here.
Yeah, sir.
Always
We'll write
remember,
it, sir.
yeah, always
Okay.
remember that prepayments reduces the expenses for the year. Prepayment reduces the expenses for the year. Okay. Over here, I'm talking about prepaid expense. Now, what is the
Okay.
logic of writing this? Why am I saying that it reduces the expense? Because we have just studied in
Okay.
the book as well that if the
Okay.
expense is not relating to this year, why are we even recording
Yes,
it?
sir.
So accrual concept
Yes.
also says that we only record the expense or income in the period which it relates to, right? We cannot
Okay,
do it
sir.
like this, like 4 months benefit we're taking in January to April 2023, but we are recording
Yes.
that in 2022. So that will,
Oh,
be a bad effect to cut off. Cut off will, just go off from financial statements. And
yes,
that
sir.
is a thing that is not liked by users, right? It will
Okay, sir.
unnecessarily decrease the expenses, right? Because if we include
Okay.
prepayment of next year as well, it will
Okay.
unnecessarily reduce the expenses. We just
Okay,
need to
sir.
reduce it by 2 months, only November and December. Okay,
Okay, sure,
right?
sir.
This is prepayment. And remember that accruals always increases the expenses, increases the expenses for the year. Accrual always
Oh,
increases the expenses for the year. Why? Because it's a obligation on us, it's a burden on us, right? That we have to
yes,
make
sir.
that expense payment. So
Yes,
that's why
sir.
it increases the expense over here.
Let's write the first point also, sir, that it should be included that 1 year in that year
Yeah, yeah,
alone,
yeah,
sir.
yeah. Let me write that as well.
Okay.
So
Okay.
over here, I was telling that accrual concept states that only income or expenses relating
Okay.
to the period which it relates Accrual concept states that only income and expenses relating to the period which it relates should be recorded.
Yes.
Okay. Now this third point will be further clarified through practicing the questions. Okay, that will
Sure,
going
sir.
in just a while.
Sure, sir.
Okay, right. I'll send you these notes as well after the class, after doing the
Sure,
questions.
sir.
So till
Sure, sir.
now, are you clear about, even if you're
Clear.
40-50% clear, that's enough till now.
Oh,
Okay. If you're not fully clear, that's
okay.
completely fine. Because obviously we'll be fully clear once we are done with the questions.
Sure, sir.
Okay, right. Now there are only two things remaining that are basically the two T accounts that I have to tell you. Okay. Now,
Oh, okay, sir.
first T account is this one. Like we make a T account for every type of thing. So first I'm making for
Oh, right.
income, and then I'll make over here for expense.
Sure, sir.
Yep. Um, okay, so this is the expense one. First I'll write the expenses. This is the expense, and this is the income. Okay. Now in expense what we do is that we just account for two things: the prepayment expense, the prepaid,
Okay.
and the accrued expense. Right, two things. And
Sure,
in
sir.
income over here we also had two things: accrued income, right, and prepaid income.
Sure.
Right, so
Yes,
two
sir.
things. Now in expense, if we look at prepaid expense was our asset, if you remember. If I go back up again, you can see
Yes, sir.
prepaid expense. Where is it? Over here. Yeah, you can see prepaid expense, it's an asset. So anything which
Asset.
is an
Yes,
asset,
correct.
we are recording it on the debit side. So if there is any opening balance, um, let me basically change the T accounts because it will become very
Hmm.
messy. Sorry about this. Let me make one
No.
T account over here and one at the bottom in the next page.
Yes, sir. Let's do that, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a T account for expense. Okay. Now
Okay.
in expense, I was telling you that any opening balance relating to the prepaid expense will be written over here. Now, why I'm writing it on the debit side? Because it's an expense. So it's an asset. Sorry, right? Prepaid
Asset.
expense
Yes,
was an
sir.
asset. So anything which is an asset, that opening balance always comes on the debit side, right? Now, two
Done.
things were here: accrued and prepayment, right? So prepayment we have dealt with. Now, what about accrued? Any opening balance relating to the accrued expense. Accrued expense, you remember, it was a delayed expense. Delayed expense means extra obligation, extra liability, right? So accrued was
Yes.
liability. So any liability, it has always an opening balance on the credit side, right?
Done,
So
sir.
accrued expense opening will be coming on the credit side. Now these opening balances mostly will be given to you in the questions. Okay,
Okay, sir.
right. Now the second thing that we do is that in this is all always remember expense account. So second thing that we do is we write the cash paid, because in expense we are paying the cash, right? At the end of the month or end
Yes.
of the year, we'll sometime pay the cash, right? Sometime. So in what we do is that cash paid, we'll write it over here. Why
Okay,
I'm
sir.
writing it over here, I'll write the double entry for this as well. What we do is debit expense and credit cash whenever we record expense, right? Debit expense, credit
Okay.
cash. This is cash paid. So that's why we're writing it on the debit side of expense account. Okay.
Okay, sir.
After that, we'll simply write obviously the totals. These are the
Okay.
totals. And if there is a closing balance as a accrued expense, it will be coming over here. Like the balancing that we studied, simply the weaker side, right? If you remember. And if we have a prepaid expense, we'll have a closing balance over here. Now, what
Yes,
logic this
correct,
has?
sir.
This always has an opposite effect over here. Like opening for this will have a closing over here, and opening for this will have a closing over here.
The opposite effect. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
exactly. Okay, so this is the expense account, and once we are done with all of this, we'll get a balancing figure. Now none of this is balancing figure. Okay, sometimes obviously it depends what we need to find. Sometimes we need to find the closing balances, sometimes we need to find this one. So what we do is that there's a balancing figure which is called expense, and this will be going into the profit or loss. Okay, this is a balancing figure.
Okay, sir.
This will be coming over here. This is the main figure over here. That's why I am highlighting it.
Okay.
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 So this will mostly be asked in the questions, but if this is not asked, the closing balances will be asked. Okay.
Sure, sir.
So this is the expense amount that we will write it in the statement of profit or loss. Actually, the expense that incurred, right?
Okay, sir.
Okay. This is the expense T account. Now let's move on to the income T account.
Okay, done. Okay,
Okay. So this is the income T account. Income. Again, income was of two types: prepaid income as well
yes.
and
And
accrued income as well. Okay. Just a
yes.
second.